keynote speech of Professor Ahmet Kuru, and the title of his speech is The Global Crisis of Democracy, Populism, Nationalism and Religions. But before the speech, I would like to say some words about our professor, our friend and colleague from the United States of America. Ahmet Kuru is a professor of political sciences and the director of Center for Islamic and Arabic Studies at San Diego State University. He's the author of Secularism and State Policies Towards Religion, the United States, France, and Turkey, published in 2009. His recent book, Islam, Authoritarianism, and Underdevelopment, a Global and Historical Comparison, published in 2019, won several awards and was translated into about a dozen languages. The floor is yours, dear professor.
Thanks for inviting me to this important conference. We are recording talk. I appreciate the invitation of Professors Juozas Vilčiukas of Lithuania to this important conference, The Drones Above Me and the Moral Laws Inside Me, Freedom and Security. The topic is very crucial because at this point we are in a global crisis of democracy, where both security and freedoms are under challenge. Normally, democracy is a system based on balance of power, and monopolization of power and hegemonic resources of might is the real problem for any democracy. And in the field I analyze, religion and politics, we see an increasing trend of monopolization and establishment of hegemonic powers. And interestingly, this is today a major reason for the new alliance emerging globally between religion and nationalism. As a scholar of comparative politics, I analyze religion and nationalism in many countries. Interestingly, there is a new trend which challenge the historically established notions. Historically, in both Christian world and the Muslim majority countries, nationalism after the 16th century emerged in reaction to the religious establishment. In Europe, national churches, vernacular languages, and the national identity and nation states expanded their influence at the expense of the continental authority of the Pope, the Latin language, and the divinely ordained dynasties. And in the Muslim world, few centuries later, nationalism emerged once again as a challenge to the established religious authority. In the case of Turkey, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk and other secularist founders of Turkey challenged the ulama, the caliphate, and the religious establishment of the Ottoman Empire. Later on, we see the similar trends among the nationalists in Iran and the nationalists in the Arab world, such as the Jamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, who had a big problem with the Islamists. The secularist Islamist struggle was the major component of Arab politics, Turkish and Iranian politics from 1920s to late 1970s at least. Islamists wanted to keep the Sharia. They wanted to keep the madrasa traditional education system, and they want to emphasize the Islamic global identity called the Ummah. Whereas the nationalists wanted to bring secular laws either from Europe or produce at home. They want to emphasize secular education with a modern school system, and they want to emphasize national identity, defended and promoted by nation states. And this, as I said at the very beginning, created some balance of power in many Christian and Muslim countries, and the tension between religion and nationalism was something helpful for democratization in many cases. But in the last 2 decades or so, we see a new trend that the religion and nationalism becomes partners, and the glue that brings them together is populism. So populism basically refers to a political movement that claims to challenge both the elite, and they define the elite as a corrupt elite, and the others, quote unquote, others generally are religious or ethnic minorities, and in many cases, immigrants. And in the particular form of right-wing populism, certain demagogues who can play with the sentiments of the mob attack both the elite and the minorities while establishing right-wing populist hegemonies. This is what we have seen in Donald Trump's United States, the attempt by Marine Le Pen in France, definitely Orban's Hungary, Putin's Russia, Modi's India, Erdogan's Turkey, and Netanyahu's Israel. We see how strong men or strong women with a demagogue attitude bring together religion and nationalism in their right-wing populist movement, political force, and in many cases, government. And this is inherently problematic for democracy because these right-wing populists challenge the basics of minority rights by their anti-minority, anti-immigrant rhetorics. And they manipulate their constituency with the idea of alternative realities and blaming established media as producing falsehood. And in order to mobilize their constituencies, these leaders use religious symbols as political means. Each of these leaders represent particular characteristics because some coming from Muslim background, other Christian, Jewish, Hindu, etc. Some are anti-gay, some are not. Some are attacking immigrants, whereas others attacking minorities at home already. But despite all these differences, they have certain similarities. And one is the usage of religious symbols in a very physical manner. When I was in Paris this summer, for example, walking down from the Eiffel Tower to the River Seine, I saw a huge new cathedral with multiple domes. When I asked to learn that 7 years ago, it was established by Russian leader Putin. So Putin marked his Christian nationalist project even in Paris. Meanwhile, in Turkey, Erdogan converted Hagia Sophia, which was a church, then turned into a mosque under the Ottoman rule, then made a museum by Atatürk. And Erdogan converted it into a mosque again. And meanwhile, at the other side of the Asian continent, Modi opened a new Hindu temple on the territory of a destroyed mosque, Babra Masjid, which was violently destroyed by Hindu radicals, killing several Muslims. And all of this symbolism represent how religion, populism, and nationalism came together. And it has multiple meanings and very bad meanings for minorities. So minority rights are under danger, they're attacked. Recently, I was in Malaysia, where Muslim Malay domination tried to Islamicize the legal system and politics. And for Chinese and Indian originated citizens who happen to be Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, this is a big danger and concern for them to see how what I call ulama state alliance, the combination of clergy and the political authority, push for further Islamization of the legal system, which means restricted rights for minorities. And meanwhile, in the other parts of the world, it was Muslim minorities who are attacked, concerned, and marginalized by right-wing populist governments. Again, in India, 200 million Muslims live as a minority. And now the Modi government are using bulldozers to destroy certain properties of Muslims as a way of punishment, in a way that these bulldozers became the symbol of Hindu nationalism and anti-Muslim populism. And other cases, even in my country, United States, where Donald Trump pushed what was called then the Muslim ban, which was an executive order for the restrictions and prohibition of people coming from certain Muslim majority countries, and then the ban on their visa status. And now that Donald Trump is seeking for an election in November, where he promised to impose an even expanded version of the so-called Muslim ban. So this is a worrisome trend. And let me conclude my brief presentation with the question, what can we do if religion and nationalism coming together under a right-wing populist demagogue leadership from the Western world to the Muslim majority countries, if democracy and freedoms are under attack, if the security issues are used as a justification from Israel's destruction of Gaza to other cases, right-wing populist leaders use security concerns to justify for their attack to freedoms and liberties of the people, especially minorities. What can we do? And this timely conference will bring solutions, of course. And then a major thing is what I would call the responsibility of religious leaders, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Hindu leaders. If they are serious about the religious identity and the moral values of their traditions, they should really be concerned about this trend and try to stop it. Because, first of all, religion is supposed to defend a moral ground based on principles and values. And this conference theme, referring to the very important German philosopher Kant and his notion of moral duty inside us, and either coming from a secular philosophical background or a more religiously covenant-based notion of moral principles, we as human beings need to emphasize morality as the basis of the legal system, political system, and or social interaction. And if religion will help us to promote moral principles and values, it should put a distance between itself and the political authority, especially if the political authority is corrupt, if the political authority is repressive. And in the case of right-wing populist demagogue leaders from the United States to Europe, from Asia to Africa, we see how nepotism, corruption, and repression are normal characteristics of many of these regimes. And the religious leaders, if they are sincere about their claim of defending morality and values and principles, they should put a distance between themselves and these right-wing demagogue leaders. Short-term gains will not mean long-term achievement. In certain cases, like the United States, evangelical groups think that they are gaining certain short-term achievements by using Donald Trump, who nominates Supreme Court justices to the Supreme Court, and that may be helpful for religious cause. But from a longer point of view, it's a big loss. Because in the United States, for example, today, 25% of people are declaring that they are unaffiliated, which means they no longer have any religion. And when we analyze how in the last 20 years, the number of unaffiliated people jumped from 8% to 25%, we see that many Democrats left religion, stopped going to church, stopped defining themselves as Christian. Because of the strong connection between GOP, Republican Party, and the evangelical and other Christian churches, even before Donald Trump. And this secularization should be a concern for religious leaders because they are losing the people. The same phenomenon exists in the Middle East too. In Iran, according to a recent public survey, half of society declared that they are no longer Muslim because they are critical of the mullah regime there, where Islam is a major component of an authoritarian regime. In the Arab world, in Turkey and elsewhere, the young generation increasingly see religion as part of an authoritarian regime which restricts freedoms of both minority and even some majority people. So in this regard, to sum up, I would say that we are facing a global crisis of democracy, which threatens our freedoms, and the combination of religion with populist nationalism is becoming an important pillar of these worrisome trends and new hegemony. And both secular people and religious people have duties and responsibilities to stop this worrisome process. And from a religious point of view, by being a partner of authoritarian leaders, religious leaders are risking their principle-based moral values and at the same time facing a deeper, higher level of secularization as a result of the fact that young generation is increasingly becoming aware of this problem of religion becoming a political instrument. Therefore, I would like to end my brief presentation with the hope that with a global awareness of this problem, we may reach the point where our freedoms are protected, where we rethink about our moral grounds and morality inside us. And I think this conference will make a big contribution for such a global awareness. Thank you for inviting me, and thanks for organizing. Once again, thanks to Professor Josas Vilčukas. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Professor Ahmet Kuru from the United States of America. All three keynote speeches reflect how interdisciplinary this conference is, combining experts from political sciences, philosophy, law. This is our strength, I believe so much.